Have you ever wondered why the battle against lust seems most intense precisely when you're trying to draw closer to God? Why, in the moments you most seek purity, do impure thoughts become more frequent and powerful, as if an invisible force is working against your spiritual transformation? Let me tell you something that perhaps no one has explained to you with the necessary depth. Your struggle against lust isn't just a matter of personal discipline or mental control. It's actually one of the most significant spiritual battles a soul can face on this earth. And if you're fighting this battle, if you're feeling this constant tension between what your spirit desires and what your flesh craves, you're not alone, and you're not failing as a Christian. You are, in fact, experiencing one of the oldest and most universal trials on the human journey toward the sacred. I know you've tried everything. I know you've prayed countless times, begging for deliverance. I know you've promised God you'd be different, that this time it would be for real. I know you've felt broken, ashamed, questioning whether it's truly possible to live a pure life in this world. And I know that at some point you've wondered if God really loves you, if He truly accepts you, especially after another relapse, another failure in this very intimate area of your life. I want you to know that this pain you feel is real. That shame that corrodes your insides, that feeling of being trapped in a seemingly unbreakable cycle, that frustration of wanting to be holy but feeling constantly defeated by the flesh, all of this is absolutely valid and more common than you imagine. It's not spiritual weakness. It's not a lack of faith. It's not evidence that you're not truly saved. It is, indeed, evidence that you are spiritually alive, that a real battle is happening in your soul, a war between two kingdoms vying for control of your heart. When we look to the Scriptures, we see that this battle is nothing new. King David, described as a man after God's own heart, fell into lust when he gazed upon Bathsheba. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, was seduced by his desires and strayed from the Lord's ways. Samson, gifted with supernatural strength to be a liberator of Israel, was defeated not by entire armies, but by Delilah's seduction. And even the Apostle Paul, the one who left us the deepest teachings on the Christian life, openly confessed, "For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing." This is the reality of the human heart. This is the universal condition of every soul who chooses to walk the path of holiness. Lust isn't just a physical impulse or a hormonal response. It's an expression of fallen nature, a manifestation of the original rebellion that still echoes in every fiber of our being. It's a spiritual force that operates through the flesh, but its roots are planted far deeper than any purely biological explanation can reach. And that's precisely why purely human methods, however well-intentioned, repeatedly fail to provide lasting liberation. You can try to filter your internet, avoid certain situations, occupy your mind with other activities, but if you don't understand the spiritual nature of this battle, you'll always be fighting only the symptoms, never the root of the problem. The truth that needs to be revealed is this: your struggle against lust is, in fact, a battle for the control of your spiritual identity. It's a war between who you are in Christ and who the enemy of your soul wants you to believe you are. It's a conflict between the new creation God is forming in you and the old patterns that insist on resurfacing. It's a dispute between the eternal purpose God has for your life and the temporary distractions that seek to divert you from that sacred calling. And herein lies the first profound reason why this battle is so intense in your life. Lust is one of the enemy's most effective weapons against your divine purpose. When you understand that you were created to be a bearer of God's glory on this earth, when you awaken to the fact that your life has eternal significance and that you were called to impact the kingdom of darkness through the light you carry, then you become a real threat to the spiritual forces of evil. And one of the most effective ways to neutralize that threat is through lust, because it not only compromises your purity, but also directly attacks your spiritual self-esteem, making you question your identity in Christ and your ability to be used by God. Lust operates as a spiritual smokescreen. It not only tempts you to sin, but also distorts your perception of who you really are. When you give in to lust, you're not just committing an impure act. You are, symbolically, exchanging your identity as a child of God for the identity of a slave to the flesh. You are choosing immediate gratification over eternal reward. You are allowing an external force to define your inner worth. And the enemy knows that once you accept this distorted identity, it will be much harder for you to walk in the power and authority that God has given you. Think of Joseph in Egypt. When Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, it wasn't just a matter of physical desire at stake. It was a matter of identity and destiny. Joseph knew who he was, a man with a divine purpose, and knew that giving in to that temptation would mean compromising not only his purity, but the entire plan God had for his life. Your response: how could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Reveals that you understood the spiritual dimension of that moment. You knew this wasn't just a moral decision, but a decision about who you would choose to be and which kingdom you would serve. The second reason this battle is so persistent is that lust acts as a spiritual substitute for genuine intimacy with God. Deep down, there's a profound and unquenchable thirst for connection, for union, for transcendence. You were created to experience a deep intimacy with your Creator, a communion that satisfies the deepest longings of your soul. But when this thirst isn't quenched at the right source, when you're not experiencing the fullness of God's love in your daily life, your soul seeks alternatives. And lust presents itself as one of those alternatives, promising a satisfaction it can never truly provide. Lust is, in essence, a distorted pursuit of the sacred. It's a desperate attempt to fill the spiritual void through carnal means. That's why the gratification it offers is always temporary and leaves you emptier than before. That's why, no matter how many times you give in, the thirst is never truly quenched. Because you're trying to kill spiritual hunger with carnal food, you're trying to quench eternal thirst with temporal water. When you understand this, you realize the solution isn't just resisting temptation, but redirecting that thirst to its original source. True liberation from lust comes when you learn to experience genuine intimacy with God, when you discover there's a satisfaction available in the presence of the Lord that surpasses any carnal pleasure. It's when you taste and see that the Lord is good, when you experience the unconditional love of the Father, when you allow yourself to be embraced by infinite grace, that lust loses its seductive power over you. David, even after his fall with Bathsheba, understood this truth. In Psalm 63 he writes, "My soul thirsts for you, my flesh faints for you, in a dry and weary land where there is no water." He was expressing that he had discovered his deepest thirst was for God, and that when this thirst was quenched at the right source, all other thirsts lost their urgency. The third reason you face this battle so intensely is related to unhealed emotional wounds that exist in your soul. Lust often feeds on unprocessed pain, unhealed rejections, emotional voids that have never been adequately filled. Perhaps you grew up without feeling the unconditional love of a parent, or perhaps you experienced rejection in significant relationships. Maybe you carry wounds of abandonment, betrayal, abuse, or simply of not feeling truly accepted and valued for who you are. These wounds create an emotional void that desperately seeks to be filled, and lust presents itself as a temporary painkiller for this pain. It offers a momentary escape from painful emotional reality, a temporary sense of pleasure that masks the underlying pain. But, like any painkiller, it never heals the real wound. It only camouflages the symptoms while the spiritual infection continues to spread. That's why many people find that their struggle with lust intensifies during times of emotional stress, loneliness, rejection, or frustration. It's no coincidence. It's because lust is operating as a dysfunctional coping mechanism, an inadequate attempt to deal with real emotional pain. And until these wounds are brought into the light of God's presence and genuinely healed through the process of spiritual restoration, they will continue to create a vulnerability in your soul that lust will repeatedly exploit. Jesus understood this profoundly. When he encountered the Samaritan woman at the well, he didn't just confront her sexual behavior, he went straight to the heart of her emotional pain. He spoke about her spiritual thirst, about the broken relationship she had experienced, about her fruitless search for satisfaction in the wrong places. And when he offered her living water, genuine satisfaction for her deepest thirst, she didn't just change her behavior. She was transformed in her fundamental identity. Healing emotional wounds is a process that requires time, vulnerability, and often the help of others who can walk with us on this journey. But it's an essential process for lasting liberation. When you allow God to heal the wounds of your heart, when you learn to receive the unconditional love of the Father, when you discover your true identity as a beloved child, the emotional roots of lust begin to wither. Not because you're resisting more strongly, but because the emotional need that fueled the compulsion is being met at the right source. The fourth spiritual reason for the intensity of this battle is that lust is a form of disguised idolatry. It may sound strange at first, but when you examine it more deeply, you realize that lust is, in essence, the worship of something created in place of the Creator. It's elevating physical pleasure, immediate gratification, personal control to a position that should only be occupied by God in your life. Idolatry is never just about statues or physical images. It's about where you place your ultimate trust, where you seek your supreme satisfaction, what you're willing to sacrifice everything to obtain. And when lust becomes a dominant force in your life, it's functionally occupying God's place. You find yourself thinking about it constantly, planning around it, making moral compromises to accommodate it, lying or hiding to protect it. These are all behaviors of worship directed at the wrong object. The first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me," wasn't given because God is insecure or possessive. It was given because he knows our hearts were created to worship, and that whatever we worship will ultimately shape us in its image. When you worship God, you become more like him, more loving, more holy, more free. But when you worship lust, you become more like it, more compulsive, more selfish, more enslaved. This is one of the reasons why the battle against lust is so spiritual in nature. It's not just a matter of behavior, it's a matter of worship. It's a battle for supremacy in your heart, and the enemy knows that if he can get you to worship anything other than God, even unconsciously, he can keep you from the purpose and power for which you were created. Liberation comes when you consciously identify this idolatry and make a deliberate choice to dethrone lust from its position of worship in your life. This means more than just saying no to the behavior. It means saying yes to something greater. It means consciously choosing to worship God instead of worshiping pleasure. It means finding your identity, your satisfaction, your security in God instead of in sexual gratification. King Josiah, when he discovered that idolatry had infiltrated the temple, didn't just remove the idols. He completely destroyed them and reconsecrated the space for true worship. This is a powerful image of what must happen in your heart. It's not enough to just remove lust. You must reconsecrate that space in your soul to the worship of God. The fifth, and perhaps most profound spiritual reason for this battle, is that it represents a test of your faithfulness to your spiritual calling. God doesn't allow you to face temptations that are beyond your ability to resist, but He does allow you to be tested. And often, the most significant tests come in the areas where you are most vulnerable, where your flesh is weakest, where the consequences of failure are most devastating to your spiritual testimony. Lust is one of the most revealing tests of spiritual character because it simultaneously attacks multiple dimensions of your spiritual life. It tests your discipline, your integrity, your dependence on God, your willingness to choose the invisible over the visible, the eternal over the temporal. It reveals whether you are truly committed to spiritual transformation or if you're just playing religion. But here's the truth. The enemy doesn't want you to know. Every time you resist lust, every time you choose purity over momentary pleasure, every time you cry out to God in your weakness instead of giving in to temptation, you are not just winning an individual battle. You are being forged into a more powerful spiritual weapon. You are developing spiritual muscles that will be essential for the greater battles to come. You are proving, both to yourself and to the spiritual realm, that your devotion to God is genuine, that your love for Him is stronger than your fleshly desires. Think of Daniel, who was tested repeatedly in his faithfulness to God. Each test he passed, from refusing to defile himself with the king's food to his willingness to face the lion's den rather than stop praying, increased his spiritual authority and his ability to impact the kingdom of darkness. Similarly, every victory you win over lust increases your spiritual authority, your confidence in God, and your capacity to be used powerfully in God's kingdom. The test of lust is particularly significant because it often occurs in private, away from the eyes of others. It's a test of who you really are when no one is looking, of whether your integrity is genuine or just a public performance. It's a test of whether you serve God out of love or for show, whether your spirituality is real or superficial. And here's something that can completely transform your perspective on this battle. God is not surprised by your struggle. He's not disappointed in you. He's not considering giving up on you. On the contrary, the fact that you are facing this battle, the fact that it is so intense, the fact that you care so much about it, may be evidence that God has significant plans for your life. It may be evidence that the enemy is working overtime to try to prevent you from reaching your spiritual destiny. Satan doesn't waste time trying to thwart people who don't represent a threat to his kingdom. He doesn't waste ammunition on insignificant targets. If you are facing an intense spiritual battle, if lust seems to be specifically targeting your life, it may be because you have spiritual potential that the enemy is desperate to neutralize. It may be because there is a calling on your life that he is trying to prevent you from discovering and fulfilling. This perspective changes everything. Instead of seeing your struggle as evidence of spiritual failure, you can begin to see it as evidence of spiritual significance. Instead of feeling disqualified because of the battle, you can feel honored to be considered a threat big enough to merit so much negative spiritual attention. But understanding the spiritual reasons behind the battle is only the beginning. True liberation comes when you learn to apply practical spiritual truths to win this fight. And the first truth is this: you cannot overcome lust by trying to be stronger. You overcome lust by learning to be more dependent on God. Human strength, however great, has limits. Your willpower, your discipline, your determination, these are all finite resources that deplete under constant pressure. But God's strength is infinite and available to you through faith. The secret isn't trying to be stronger than temptation, but learning to connect with a source of strength greater than any temptation. Paul understood this when he wrote, "When I am weak, then I am strong." He was revealing that he discovered his greatest strength came not from his personal ability, but from his reliance on God's power. And this is especially true in the battle against lust. The more you try to win through your own strength, the more frustrated you become. But when you learn to run to God in your moments of weakness, when you learn to cry out for his strength in the midst of temptation, you discover a source of power that never fails. The second practical truth is that freedom from lust doesn't come through eliminating desire, but through sanctifying desire. God didn't create you without desires. He doesn't intend for you to live a passionless life. On the contrary, he wants to redirect your passions toward holy goals. He wants to transform the intensity you feel into a driving force for intimacy with him and service to his kingdom. Sexual desire in its pure form and in the right context is a gift from God. It's an image of the passion he feels for you, the intimacy he desires to have with you, the spiritual union he's preparing for you to experience with him for all eternity. The problem isn't desire itself, but the object and context of desire. Liberation comes when you learn to offer your desires to God, asking him to purify and redirect them. It comes when you stop fighting the passion you feel and begin channeling it toward holy purposes. It comes when you discover that there's an intensity available in worship, prayer, and service to God's kingdom that can satisfy the need for passion that exists in your soul. The third truth is that victory over lust is a process, not an event. Many people become discouraged because they expect instant and complete deliverance. They pray once, make a consecration prayer, and expect never to be tempted again. But that's not usually how God works in sanctification. He's more interested in developing your character through the process of overcoming temptation than simply removing temptation from your life. Every temptation you face is an opportunity to grow spiritually. Every time you choose to pray instead of giving in, when you seek God instead of seeking gratification, when you trust in his strength instead of giving up on your own weakness, you are being transformed. You're developing spiritual resilience, spiritual discernment, spiritual dependence. The process may be long. It may include occasional failures. It may have ups and downs. But if you remain committed to the process, if you continue seeking God, even when you fail, if you refuse to give up even when the battle seems impossible, you will discover that God is faithful to complete the work he has begun in you. The fourth practical truth is that spiritual community is essential to victory. Lust thrives in isolation, secrecy, and shame. It loses its power when it's brought into the light, when it's shared with others who can offer prayer, encouragement, and accountability. God never intended for you to face your spiritual battles alone. Finding someone you trust, a spiritual mentor, an accountability group, a Christian counselor, with whom you can be completely honest about your struggle, can be a turning point in your journey of freedom. Not because this person has some magical power to set you free, but because confession breaks the power of secrecy, and encouragement strengthens your resolve when you're tempted to give up. James wrote, "Confess your faults to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed." There's something powerful in mutual confession and shared prayer that unleashes God's power in ways that solitary struggle never can. The fifth truth is that you must replace old patterns with new spiritual patterns. It's not enough just to stop doing something. You must start doing something different. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you simply try to eliminate lust from your life, without replacing it with something positive, you'll create a void that will be filled by something, and it will frequently be filled by the very thing you were trying to eliminate. This means developing new habits of prayer, Bible study, worship, and service. It means finding healthy ways to channel your energy and passion. It means creating structures in your life that support your spiritual goals and eliminate or minimize unnecessary temptations. This isn't about legalism or trying to earn God's favor through works. It's about cooperating with the work God is doing in you, creating an environment in your life where spiritual transformation can flourish, replacing destructive patterns with patterns that build your soul and honor God. Finally, the most important truth. Your identity is not defined by your struggle. You are not a lust addict trying to be a Christian. You are a child of God learning to live according to your true identity. You are not your temptations. You are not your failures. You are not your weakest moments. You are who God says you are, loved, accepted, valued, forgiven, and being transformed into the image of Christ. The enemy of your soul wants you to identify with your struggle. He wants you to believe that lust is simply who you are, that it's your fundamental nature, that it's impossible for you to live any other way. But that's a lie. Your struggle doesn't define you. Your response to the struggle defines you. And each time you choose to seek God amidst temptation, you're demonstrating who you truly are. There's a war raging for the narrative of your life. The enemy is trying to write a story of defeat, of bondage, of spiritual failure. But God is writing a story of redemption, of transformation, of victory through dependence on Him. And you have the power to choose which story you will live. When Jesus encountered the woman caught in adultery, He didn't define her by her sin. He defined her by her potential for transformation. When He said, "Go and sin no more," He wasn't just giving a command. He was making a statement about who she truly was. Someone capable of living differently, someone with the capacity to choose righteousness, someone worthy of a second chance. Similarly, God isn't looking at you through the lens of your failings. He's looking at you through the lens of His grace, seeing not only who you are today, but who you are becoming through the process of sanctification. He sees the end from the beginning. He sees the mature, victorious person you will be when He completes the work He started in you. This perspective changes everything about how you approach your struggle. Instead of fighting from a place of shame and despair, you can fight from a place of identity and hope. Instead of trying to prove something to God, you can rest in what He has already proven about you through Christ. Instead of fearing you'll never change, you can have confidence that the one who began the good work in you will be faithful to complete it. The journey won't be easy. There will be days when temptation seems overwhelming. There will be moments when you feel too weak to keep fighting. There will be times when you may fail and feel tempted to give up altogether. But remember, God's strength is made perfect in weakness. His grace is sufficient. His love for you never fails, and He is committed to your transformation far more than you are yourself. Each morning is a new opportunity to choose who you will be that day. Each temptation is a new opportunity to exercise your dependence on God. Each victory, however small, is evidence that transformation is happening. And each step forward, however small, brings you closer to the person God created you to be. Lust may seem powerful, but it is not more powerful than the God who lives within you. It may seem persistent, but it is not more persistent than God's love for you. It may seem impossible to overcome, but all things are possible to him who believes. Your struggle with lust is not evidence that you are spiritually flawed. It is evidence that you are spiritually alive, that there is a real battle raging for your soul, that you have a spiritual destiny worth fighting for. And when you finally experience true freedom, and you will be able to look back and see that every battle was worth it, that every moment of dependence on God brought you closer to Him, that every victory prepared you to impact others who are facing the same struggles. You are not just fighting for your own freedom, you are fighting to become someone who can help others find their freedom. You are being prepared to be a warrior in God's kingdom, someone who knows both the power of temptation and the power of God's grace. You are being molded into a weapon in God's hands to bring liberation to others who are trapped where you once were. This is the eternal perspective. This is the kingdom vision. This is the truth that can sustain you through the toughest days of the battle. You are not just fighting to stop doing something that harms you. You are fighting to become someone who can bring healing to a hurting world, someone who can demonstrate the transformative power of God, someone through whom God can touch other lives with His grace. And in the end, when you are on the other side of this battle, when you can look back and see how God used even your struggle to mold you into who you are today, you will understand that nothing was wasted. Every tear shed in prayer, every moment of brokenness before the altar, every time you cried out for mercy in your weakness, every occasion when you chose to seek God instead of giving in to temptation, all of it was contributing to a greater purpose than you could see at the time. Your struggle with lust is teaching you about the nature of divine dependence in a way that perhaps no other experience could teach. It is revealing to you the depths of God's grace, the infinite patience of His love, the constancy of His faithfulness, even when you feel unfaithful. It is showing you that He doesn't love you because of your spiritual performance, but simply because you are His child, created in His image, bought with the blood of Jesus, sealed with the Holy Spirit for the day of redemption. This struggle is also developing in you a deep compassion for others who face similar battles. When you finally experience freedom, you will not be someone who judges those who are still struggling. You will be someone who reaches out with understanding, someone who can say with authority, "I know what this battle is like, and I know there is hope. I know God is faithful. I know liberation is possible." The world is full of people who are facing the exact same battle you are facing right now. They are struggling in silence, ashamed, thinking they are the only ones, questioning if there is truly hope for them. And God is preparing you, through your own journey of liberation, to be a source of hope for these people. Your victory will become the testimony someone needs to hear to believe they, too, can be free. Think how powerful your testimony will be when you can speak not only about the theory of liberation, but about the lived reality of it. When you can share not only Bible verses about victory, but personal stories of how God brought you through darkness into light. When you can offer not only theoretical hope, but hope based on the experience of seeing God do something in your life that seemed impossible. This is one of the reasons why God often allows us to go through intense struggles before using us powerfully. It's not because He enjoys seeing us suffer, but because He knows that our greatest spiritual authority will come not from our strength, but from our experience of His strength working through our weakness. Our greatest ministerial credibility will come not from our perfection, but from our experience of God's transforming grace. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote about his thorn in the flesh. He prayed 3 times for God to remove it, but God replied, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul got to the point where he could say, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." He had discovered that his struggles didn't disqualify him for ministry. They qualified him for a specific kind of ministry, a ministry of grace to the weak, of hope to the despairing, of liberation to the captive. Your struggle with lust may be preparing you for exactly that kind of ministry. It may be qualifying you to reach people no one else can reach, to speak life over situations that seem dead, to demonstrate the power of God in areas where others only see defeat. Your experience of liberation can become the key that unlocks the prisons in which others are bound. But for that to happen, you must persevere through the process. You must refuse to give up, even when the battle seems unending. You must continue seeking God, even when you feel unworthy of His presence. You must continue believing in His goodness, even when your circumstances suggest otherwise. You must continue trusting His promises, even when your present experience seems to contradict them. Faith is called faith precisely because it operates independently of visible circumstances. It's the ability to believe what God has said about you and about your situation, even when everything around you seems to contradict it. It's the decision to trust God's character even when you can't understand his methods. It's the choice to lean on his promises even when you can't see how they will be fulfilled. And here is a promise on which you can lean with complete confidence. He who called you is faithful, and he will do it. God didn't call you to holiness without also providing everything you need to live holy. He didn't plant a thirst for purity in your heart without also creating a path for that thirst to be quenched. He didn't convict you of your need for liberation without also having a plan for your freedom. Your part is to cooperate with what he is doing. It's to say yes to the opportunities for growth that he places before you. It's to choose dependence on him instead of self-reliance. It's to seek his face in prayer instead of seeking relief in the wrong places. It's to believe his word even when your feelings contradict it. It's to persevere in the process, even when it seems too long. Remember that God operates on an eternal timeline, not just a temporal one. He is more interested in who you are becoming than how quickly you get there. He is more concerned with the depth of your transformation than the speed of it. He is more focused on the solidity of your freedom than the quickness with which it comes. This means you can stop pressuring yourself for instant change. You can stop condemning yourself for not being where you think you should be spiritually. You can stop comparing your progress to that of other people. You can rest in the reality that God is working in you, through you, and for you, even when you can't see evidence of it. Every day you choose to seek God, something is happening spiritually. Every prayer you pray, every verse you meditate on, every moment of worship you offer, every act of obedience you practice, all of it is contributing to a transformation that is deeper than you can see on the surface. God is working at levels of your soul you don't even know. And one day, perhaps sooner than you imagine, you will wake up and realize that something has shifted. You will face a temptation that used to defeat you and discover that it no longer holds the same power over you. You will find yourself thinking pure thoughts naturally, without forced effort. You will feel a freedom in your soul that wasn't there before, a peace that surpasses all understanding, a joy that doesn't depend on external circumstances. And in that moment, you will understand that everything you went through was worth it. Every battle, every tear, every moment of brokenness, every occasion of dependence on God, it was all part of a divine process of liberation that was happening even when you couldn't see it. But until that day comes, you must live by faith, not by sight. You must walk in hope, not despair. You must rest in grace, not performance. You must trust the process, even when you can't see the progress. You must believe in God's faithfulness, even when your own emotions question that faithfulness. This is the journey of faith. This is the walk of sanctification. This is the experience of every soul who seriously decides to seek God and live according to his standards in a fallen world. It's not an easy journey, but it's a journey worth taking. It's not a path without obstacles, but it's a path that leads to true freedom. It's not a road without challenges, but it's a road that ends in God's presence. And when you finally reach your destination, when you fully experience the freedom God has for you, when you become the person he always knew you could be, you will look back on all this struggle and be grateful for it. Not because suffering is good in itself, but because what God did through the suffering is too beautiful for words. You will be grateful for the dependence you learned, the humility you developed, the compassion that grew in your heart, the intimacy with God that was forged in the fire of spiritual battle. You will be grateful for how your struggle broke your pride and taught you to live by grace. You will be grateful for how it prepared you to minister to others with authority and authenticity. And you will also be grateful for how it revealed God's character to you in a way that perhaps nothing else could have revealed. You will have personally experienced his patience, his faithfulness, his mercy, his strength, his unconditional love. You will have discovered that he is even better than you imagined, even more trustworthy than you expected, even more committed to you than you dreamed. This discovery of who God really is may be the greatest gift that emerges from your struggle. Because when you truly know God, not just know about him, but know him personally through experience, it changes everything about how you live. It changes your priorities, your values, your fears, your hopes. It changes the way you see yourself, others, and the world around you. And perhaps in the end, that's the real reason God allows this battle in your life. Not just to free you from lust, but to reveal himself to you in a deeper and more personal way. Not just to change your behavior, but to transform your heart. Not just to solve a problem, but to develop a relationship. Because in the end, it's not really about lust or purity, sin or holiness, struggle or victory. It's about love. It's about a God who loves you so much that he is willing to walk with you through any dark valley to bring you into the light. It's about a Savior who values you so much that he gave his life to ensure that you could be free. It's about a Holy Spirit who cares so much about you that he will never leave you alone in your battle. Your struggle with lust is, in fact, a love story. The story of God's relentless love for you, pursuing you even in your darkest moments, calling you out of bondage into freedom, refusing to give up on you even when you are tempted to give up on yourself. And because it's a love story, it will have a happy ending. It may not come as quickly as you'd like. It may not happen in the way you expect, but it will come because God's love never fails, his faithfulness never wavers, and his grace is always sufficient. So, as you continue on this journey, remember who you are. Remember who loves you. Remember what he has promised. Remember where he is leading you. And remember that every step forward, even if it's a small one, is a step toward the freedom he has waiting for you. The question I leave you with today is this: are you willing to trust the process, even when you can't see the progress? Are you willing to believe in God's love for you, even when your struggle makes you question that love? Are you willing to persevere on the journey, knowing that the destination is worth every step of the walk? Your answer to these questions will determine not only whether you will experience deliverance, but how deep and lasting that deliverance will be. Because in the end, freedom is not just about being free from something, it's about being free for something. It's about being free to fully live as the child of God you truly are, to love as he loves, to serve as he serves, to impact the world around you with the same transformative grace that transformed you.